Here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Svelte Radio. It's me, one of your hosts, Kevin. I'm joined by my two other lovely co-hosts, Brittney and remotely FM user. Say hello.
Hi, I'm one of your hosts, remotely FM user.
Yeah. Having some issues today. We're trying out a new thing, so...
Yeah, hopefully
Antony's
this will...
poking some fun at it.
Yeah, hopefully this will work. Today we're joined by another guest. We're joined by Andreas. He's the creator of SvelteKit-superforms. Hello, Andreas.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you. So, what has everyone been up to lately? What's new?
That is letting the cat out of the bag. Like... You're just like opening up the big question. Yeah, I've had quite a week of issues, but we will get to that in Unpopular Opinions.
Oh, okay. Cool. Antony?
I have nothing to report. Everything is just...
Yeah.
That is great.
On. Continuing.
Life as a dad still going strong?
Life as a dad still going strong. Yes, indeed. Yeah, all
cool.
good.
Nice. I have been doing stuff for the upcoming Svelte Summit, and the hackathon was just the submission phase was just ended. We had 239 or 38, I don't remember, submissions. So that's going to take a while to go through, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I've seen some really cool. Yeah, I've seen some really cool submissions generally from folks. I think I mentioned at one of the earlier podcasts, it was like a Castle Wolfenstein or Wolfenstein 3D thing built in Svelte and CSS and HTML.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
All right, so Andreas, well, what's up? You're the creator of SvelteKit-superforms. What have you been up to lately? Have you, by any chance, been working on SvelteKit-superforms?
Actually, I have. I mean, now when the hackathon is finished, I've had a few days of recovering from it. So I've basically been doing all bit of spare time for the superforms.
Cool, and, nice.
Yeah, it's really expanded also lately. So I think it's been really fun to really go for it like this in a dedicated way.
Yeah, cool. So we're gonna talk a bit about superforms in a bit, but before that, we just wanted to talk to you generally. Like, how did you get into web development and engineering and all this programming stuff?
Yeah,
what's
sure.
your story?
Yeah, well, it was in the late 90s actually, where I've always been interested in computers and been doing it for some time, and then when we got internet at my school in 96, then I started to look at the web and like, oh, this is kind of interesting. So I wanted to make my own little website, and it was at that time when like float left and right in CSS was a big thing. So
the good old days.
Yeah. So I managed to make a website where I actually floated one picture to the left, so the text flowed around it, and that was like my first big achievement.
I mean, that is a big achievement for back in the days.
Yeah, it sure was.
We kind of take a lot of these things for granted now. Sorry, continue. I'm just...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well then, a few years later, I was keep doing things, and in the meantime, I didn't do so much web programming maybe, but I was still hacking around and doing other projects in different languages. And then in '99, I got the chance to go to Australia to work work for a company with a scholarship.
So
and
was
then,
that in web development?
Yes, it was, because this company needed a website back then. They had just started to sell a special kind of clothing. And yeah.
No, I was going to say, that's a very long way from... I assume you're in Sweden.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very long way from Sweden. Just to get like a... I had no idea they did that back then, but it makes sense.
Yes, it was like a scholarship for letting young people work abroad, giving them 6 months. It was like paid for everything, so the company didn't have to really pay anything either. So it was like a good chance to get an internship somewhere. Yeah. So I took that chance with this company in Australia, and I came there like knowing not much what's going to happen, and then it turned out that I was about to make like my first real web e-commerce site in '99.
Ooh.
Like a complete web shop. It's one of those things that you're not. It's a good thing you don't know what you're getting into, because when after it's done, you're like, did I do this? How was it possible?
It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah. So we use some really ancient system called HTML OS. This was even before MySQL was a big thing, so I hardly knew much about databases or anything. So this HTML OS had some really rudimentary database built into it. It was like, this was before PHP, so it was like PHP with a built-in simple kind of database in it.
I've never heard about this.
No,
never.
This is, I guess, very, very ancient.
I tried Googling a bit for it, and I only get like new projects that are like building an OS in HTML or stuff like that.
Yeah. And we actually bought a license, and it came with a big, thick printed manual with all those commands. It was really comprehensive. Like someone really tried to invent PHP and MySQL in the same package, and doing it in some CGI environment on a web server. So yeah, kind of impressed. And then I started to tinker with it, and like didn't have that much knowledge about databases, but I learned from it, and eventually we actually produced a website that you could purchase this clothing from it.
Well, mission accomplished.
Yeah, it was. And
so
then,
you stayed in Australia for a while then, and this HTML OS thing, how was it to work with? Like, do you remember it being fun, or was it a lot of frustration?
I think it was a bit frustrating. It was ahead of its time, but not very mature. So you had to struggle with it, and this template language, I remember you have to use lots of strange commands. Everything was global. It was basically just putting everything in one file and hope for the best, that there would be no pollution of variables anywhere, and some cryptic commands that you have to follow to the point.
I was going to say, that sounds like one of those old jQuery projects where you just like put everything in one file and hope that you don't interact with the DOM
right
in the wrong way.
Yeah, and now it was even a database that you didn't want to tamper with. So because it was built in, I remember it was built in some strange way. So you really had like access to the whole database, like you could have access to the whole memory of the computer. It was.
Maybe this is something we'll see in the future, like the pendulum swinging back from SPAs back to server, and then to some strange new new paradigm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we're already looking like PHP is coming back again.
I was just thinking about it because that was kind of related to my next project. When I came back to Sweden, I started to work with PHP and MySQL, of course, like the inevitable thing there in the early 2000s. So then when I was doing my projects then, I was making you take a page and you may put the PHP code on top and you put the HTML in the middle and maybe some scripting at the end. And I mean, it's kind of similar to Svelte pages. So it's funny how we really came back to that.
Full circle going back to...
Yeah, full circle. But in the middle of this circle, I mean, it was really frowned upon to do like this. So when I did it and I started to read on the web, when everyone was just saying, no, you have to do a separation of concerns to the smallest detail. So they introduced lots of template languages for PHP, and after a while it was like, okay, if I want to do MVC, I should have one file for the model, one file for the view, one for the controller, and suddenly it was very fragmented.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like this kind of thinking, and it reminds me of this. So you guys probably have heard of the FizzBuzz thing, right? Where you're supposed to like print out. Anyway, there's a FizzBuzz Enterprise Edition that someone made, which is kind of reminds me of it. Yeah, it's written in Java though, but like I'm sure it's the same thing. Like separate everything into like the tiniest of things, and then because it has like so much code for what it is. FizzBuzz is supposed to be pretty simple, but this Enterprise Edition has like a very complicated implementation of it.
I can guess, especially in Java, which is like the most static language ever invented. So you have to wrap everything in wrappers and wrap around them to make something so-called flexible.
Is this an unpopular opinion here?
I hope it's not unpopular.
To some people, it might be then. Probably Java developers, maybe. Or maybe they like that kind of thing. Who knows? All right, so you get back to Sweden, you work with PHP, and you get tired of PHP, and you start working in... Maybe you don't get tired of PHP, I'm just assuming here.
I stuck with it for quite a while. I was doing many projects with... I started my company with my brother back then, and we were doing some larger e-commerce sites. It was kind of fun. It was a company who they were doing cakes that could be sent over the mail, like physical mail.
So what kind of cakes do you send over the mail?
Yeah, very compact, flat ones.
The sticky ones.
Yeah, they should fit exactly in a mailbox. So it was like a couple of centimeters. They know the exact measurements and the height of it. And the fun thing was that they won some kind of competition about this. So it was like a national thing that, oh, look, you can send... They were really promoted like, oh, you can send a cake as a present to someone over the mail.
I think I actually remember something like this from like when I was younger. Just like some vague memory of reading about something like that. That's interesting.
Post
so you
Cake
made that website.
Was the name. Yes, we did. Yeah. And they had this funny feature that you can actually print the greeting on the cake with like a special kind of a marzipan printer. So it's like it was printing really on marzipan. Yeah, and we had to figure out the system to communicate with this cake printer.
I want a marzipan printer. That sounds amazing. But I want it to print marzipan, not print on marzipan. I want it to actually just print. I want to fill it with almonds and then print marzipan.
Like
so
a 3D butter printer.
Something? Yeah.
Almond butter 3D printer. New concept. You heard it here first, folks. All right. So moving on from PHP then, like where did you end up going then? React? Angular?
No, actually my next language, which I also stuck for very long time and still do is called Haxe. HAXE.org. And
I've heard of that.
It's a very it's a very nice language that transpiles to other languages and a lot of other languages. So they put so much effort in making this like a unified, really great kind of environment for building, making sure that you can compile to basically everything. And the language is fantastic. It has macro capabilities that you can actually write code that writes code in that way. And I was using it for a long time. I tried it. It's very popular in the game industry because there is some just-in-time compilation things with it that you can like enable this to make rapid development, and then you can basically switch to C and C++ to get the maximum speed. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I tried to use it in web, and it kind of works. I used a web framework called Mithril for that.
Yep.
So
does Haxe then compile to JavaScript and Mithril, or do you write? How would that work? Like, is there an adapter for Haxe that like?
No, it just compiles to JavaScript directly.
Okay.
Translates the whole structure of the classes that you write to JavaScript.
All right.
Yeah, it works definitely, and I was using it for a long time, but still felt like this. This can it be made even better, even more, even simpler, like this eternal question that you have as a programmer, I guess.
Yep.
And eventually, I found it.
Can we guess? Is it part of the name of the podcast?
Could be.
Yeah. Okay. Whew.
Of course, I was looking at TypeScript for a while, and I say, this looks really. It's very similar to Haxe because Haxe already has this JavaScript, ECMAScript style to it, and then I think what really hooked me into TypeScript was this when I realized that I can actually make strings into like really types here. So literal strings can be like types for any kind of any structure, and I say, hey, this is powerful. And then when you even can type check on that level with just basic if statements, and the compiler will understand in what scope you're in and like limit the variables, then I would say, okay, I really have to go for TypeScript.
So you then went to what did you use, or did you just write vanilla TypeScript?
Since I wanted to do web stuff, pretty fast I came into Svelte.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early SvelteKit versions. So I was right now been working actually for this is almost a year now for a really big project that we're about to release in maybe a month, and I'm so happy that I choose SvelteKit because it will be released now. I was converting it to as it went along now with the 1.0 version, and I'm happy to say that it will be in just a few weeks now, like a really big project in SvelteKit for production.
That's exciting.
You weren't tempted to use Cake PHP?
Yeah. I never looked back after started to look at SvelteKit, and especially the fantastic upgrades you did with the routing. Everything just clicked.
That's interesting. Usually we hear kind of the opposite when people are talking about the routing.
So when did you come into? Did you come in before the routing change or after?
Yeah, it was maybe 3-4 months before that, something like that. So I was really on the edge. I learned most of the old routing, but when I saw the new one, I say, hey, it's okay, because the new one with just this data flow from the server to the client that I'm really taking advantage of in SuperForms, it was just fantastic.
Yeah, the data flow is really, like I always say this, I think, but the data flow is really the key part with the new routing stuff. I think it's fantastic as well. I'm actually contemplating like writing a blog post explaining the data flow like the way you should work with SvelteKit, basically? Because I think that's kind of missing. It's written in the documentation, like it says what you should do, but it doesn't explain it visually with like graphs and stuff. I think that could help people. But yeah, okay. So you got into SvelteKit and Svelte. You started working with it. What did you think about the forms and the stuff around that? I assume you liked it as well.
Yeah, it was simple to get the data and post it to the server, and use it in a basic way. What bothered me a bit was this maybe disconnect between the page data and the action data. They seem to be disconnected in a way that if you do backend, for example, I wanted to actually preload the form with data really from the start. You like query the database, and then you should just populate the form.
Yep.
And I couldn't figure out a good way to do that while still doing the action data part, like showing errors and other messages. And so I started to think about, can they be connected in some way, and how?
Yeah. So with that intro, I guess, to forms and such, you started this project called Superforms, or SvelteKit-superforms.
Yeah.
To solve this problem then. So what is SvelteKit-superforms?
Yeah, it's a library that really tries to help you, to make you focus on your data, not on whether you should use action data, where is your data coming from, is page data the one I should use now, and why, and such forth. So it's really trying to simplify things in that manner, make you be able to use your data consistently, both on the server and the client. Yeah.
So one feature that I like in SvelteKit-superforms that I've used is the fact that you define your schema ahead of time using something called SOD, and that's pretty nice. And everything it feels like everything kind of flows from there. In a sense, you define your schema, and then Superforms does stuff behind the scenes, and then you get all this stuff that you can use in your pages.
And for those listening too, like Zod has been kind of in the tech news lately because Astro has used it in 2.0 as their like type safe markdown. That's what they use under the hood for that. It's like a way to generate type safe schemas, right?
Yeah, and do validation.
Sure. Yes, so this is a fantastic library. I've been able to use it in, for example, when you generate things like constraints for the different fields, then you really need to introspect the schema, and SOD has this great way of doing that. So I've been looking around at many other validation libraries, but SOD has this ability to really, at runtime you can really go into the schema and figure out every little constraint that you made on the schema. So I'm using that to generate all the HTML constraints. So you can just spread an object on the input field, and you got HTML validation, like without JavaScript.
Yep. Yeah, this is one of my favorite features as well, of course. since I pushed for it, so I might be biased. But yeah, so I always harp on about like progressive enhancement and stuff, and most form solutions they don't care about it at all. They're just like, oh, use all this stuff, and then you're there and you're like, how do I apply like the minimum number to this number input, or the maximum length, or whatever. And I think Superforms does this really well, like has this built-in way of just spreading it, and it works. And then in case you don't have JavaScript, it'll still at least somewhat validate the fields before you submit it. So what's the workflow like in Superforms? I guess we could talk a bit before that. We could talk a bit about like form actions in general in SvelteKit. So for those that don't know, in SvelteKit, there's this thing called form actions. It's basically an object with a bunch of different attributes. Each attribute corresponds to one endpoint, if you will, that you post data to from your page. Is that that an okay explanation of form actions? How would you guys describe it?
I mean, it seems useful to me. I'm definitely not that experienced and versed on form actions, but that seems a reasonable explanation. Okay. Yeah, it's essentially mapping a form's action to something on the server side.
Yeah,
and just gives you an object that you can create methods on, right?
Yeah. So the form action, it receives all of the form data in there. You can do with it what you will, just like you would in any kind of backend situation. So I guess Superforms kind of ties all this together in a way so you don't really have to worry that much about validation and all of this stuff. Like how does it work?
Yes, the schema is really the heart of everything. So I basically use that as a single source of truth for the data and the structure of what will be used on the client. So because SvelteKit has this nice thing of preserving the types, so you can define types on the server, and when you look in page data on the client, it's like you have the types just transferred over without actually transferring the bundle of the library that does this. So I think that's a really nice way of doing things. I was a bit surprised when I realized it. Like, this is like you get type safety without the weight of adding any weight to the client. So this is what happens when you infer the type from the schema. You get like this basic data structure that represents the form, and then on the client, I'm using this pattern of taking the data from what you sent in the page data, and then just sending it into this superform function, and you get the result. The result is like an object with lots of stores that will just react on future updates. So you can just deconstruct every store that you want. So if you just want the form and the errors, you just get two. You just deconstruct two stores. It makes the API quite simple, and then you just display it as usual in a Svelte page.
Before we continue with the episode, here's a word from our sponsor, Vercel.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
I mean, so I think I'm going to say that, as I said it before actually the podcast started, but I tried to build a validation library a little bit like this a while ago, and it's incredibly complicated building a validation library, more so than you'd ever expect. And I think one of the reasons that when I originally built Beyonca, I used Nuxt was I was quite excited by, I can't remember what their validation plugin's called, but it ties in quite natively with it. And I really liked that. And it was definitely missing for a long time in Svelte, in Sapper and in SvelteKit. So it's pretty interesting to see now that it's a possible thing. It's something that's more, I think due to form actions, it's more, the infrastructure's there to allow you to do it quite well. And I think this is fantastic. So I was saying to Andreas that I think I might switch to using his project very soon, because it's certainly better than roll your own.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I use it for the Svelte Summit website as well, for the email subscription thing. Works very well. No problems. That's admittedly that's a very, very simple form, right? It's just an input with email, but
still, we have some pretty complex forms, so I'll be helping you raise some bugs, Andreas. Give me some work.
Sounds good. I have a comprehensive test suite also running with all kinds of browser testing. So yeah, I want to make this stable. Mm.
It feels like it's been growing very quickly. Like you've built this, like it almost feels like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah, it truly was this hackathon spirit, you know. So I was working really hard, 24/7 for a couple of days, got something going, and then it turned out to be quite popular as well. I think it was definitely a hole to fill in the community regarding forms.
Yeah, I would agree. I've actually tried building like form libraries for Svelte a couple of years ago. Not anything as fancy as this, but like I mainly wanted it to be progressively enhanced, kind of like with the constraints and stuff. But I always got stuck with like figuring out the schema and like knowing how to basically get the schema was the problem, really. I never really go past that part. So I'm very happy to see that you managed to actually get this working really well. So what are some standout features of SuperForms?
Wow, there are a couple, I must say. Yeah. I think if we can just start out with, for example, nested data. I think you can, with SuperForms, you can actually make forms with any depth of data structures. I mean, HTML forms are one-dimensional in that sense that you can everything is strings basically in the fields, and when you post something, it just fields. So you have to jump through a lot of hoops to construct something that can really map onto the data structure that you could have in a schema. So if you have, for example, a schema with tags, you can have a user and it has posts, and the post has tags. You have really two levels of depth that you can quite easily do in SuperForms.
Yep, that's nice. Like working with form data and getting sometimes getting the values from things. If you don't have any kind of like a library or something to abstract that away, can be pretty tough. It's fine when it's just like a single depth, I guess you could say. It's fine, but as soon as you get multiple depths, it gets hard. And even just like groups and radio buttons, and that can also be a bit tough. Well, it's not tough maybe, but it's not as straightforward as you would think. But yeah. Okay, so you have the depths, like multiple depths. It's super easy to work with. You have errors as well, right?
Yeah, of course. I was thinking for quite a while on how to transfer these SOD errors. Can be quite. SOD is working on. They want things to be correct, not maybe easy to use. So you can get like a quite advanced error structure from SOD, describing every little detail in what went wrong with the validation in your schema. And I had to spend the time to actually map those errors onto something that's a bit more digestible for the web and the main user. So I'm doing this concept of, if you imagine your data structure, and it's basically objects, and then it could be an array of objects, for example, and at the end of every object, you have some kind of primitive values, like strings, numbers, and those simple things.
Yep.
And I'm basically mapping this data structure onto, for example, these errors, that every primitive value in this data structure has an array of strings which corresponds to the errors. So it's like you switch your data to a type where every leaf in this node structure becomes, well, for example, errors in this case.
It sounds complicated.
It's behind the scenes. It's a bit complicated to traverse all the data structure, but in the end, it just ends up that if you're using like form.name to express to have the value for the name, then you just use errors.name, and then you have an array of strings for displaying the errors for this field.
Yeah, because I guess an error for a field can have multiple issues with it. Like
yes. Yeah, and this works for any depths. Yeah. So if you have like a form with a post, and the post's tags have some problem, you can use just form.post and then an array access and then tags, and you can go down to this any level, and it will just be mapped onto a string of errors an array of string of errors in the errors store. So that's my take on it.
Cool. So you have so many features in this library. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around like what you can actually do. And so it really aims to be a library that takes care of all of the form stuff, right? You're not supposed to use any other kind of libraries. You're mainly supposed to use superforms, and that should be enough.
Sure. Well, that's that's how it turned out eventually. I must say, this is 25 years of tinkering with forms that I could finally get together to a really nice solution. So I took every issue I had during all those decades and just tried to make the most of it.
Yep. Yeah, because you have, so we've already mentioned error handling. We've mentioned the mapping of the data in the multiple depths forms. I'm looking here and on the docs website, you also have a use enhance. So you have a special use enhance that I guess it's enhanced. It's an enhance that is enhanced. Terrible joke, sorry. So why do you need this special enhance? Like I'm a bit curious here.
Yeah, it's a function that basically connects all the data to the form, because in essence, since this library basically works on you just use the HTML attributes with stores, so there is no behind the scenes magic or any DOM manipulations or anything. So Superforms in itself doesn't know anything about the form that you apply your HTML attributes to, like binding values and stuff. It knows nothing. So this use enhance is make a bridge between the form and all the loads of data that's within the form you're making, like all the errors, all the tainted checks, all the things like that.
It's like the regular use enhance in SvelteKit, but on steroids for Superforms. Yeah,
sure. You have events, so you can hook into the normal use enhance as well if you like. But it's still a requirement to use this one, not the built-in Svelte one, because this does a bit more.
Yep. Cool. So you mentioned tainted things.
Yeah. Yes.
That's also a standard form feature, I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
well,
that's built in.
Isn't it something like dirty in Angular? They call it dirty. Is it the same thing?
Yes, it's the same. As soon as you modify a field, or basically modify the store that connects to the data, then it calculates what field has changed and what kind of the data structure has changed, and then it reflects that in the tainted store.
Cool.
And if the form is tainted, if you try to navigate away, you get a confirmation dialog, so the user won't lose any important data.
Speaking of that, have you thought about using the snapshot feature? Now that I mention it, I know that there's a snapshot feature. I just realized. So in SvelteKit, you have this snapshot feature where you can kind of save state when you navigate away from something and navigate back, so you can restore, for example, form data. I assume this is what your feature does as well.
Yeah, it does. It's just you have these commands, capture and restore, and you can just deconstruct them from the superform object, and then you can basically make a form snapshot with one line of code.
I'm curious to like, it would be interesting to see how much time you would save writing all this manually and then just using Superforms to like get all of the same features in. I'm sure you would see a lot of time saved.
Oh yes, I would say a lot, especially on the client when you start to do things like, if I can just one other thing I think is very nice are the timers. So when you submit the form, there is 3 timers starting automatically, and you can use them to display a loading spinner, for example. There is a visual example on the website, but in short, when you submit the form, there's 1 timer starting, and then after 500 milliseconds, there is a delayed timer starting, and after 8 seconds, there is a timeout timer starting. Basically a Boolean store, so you just know if the timer is, or if the form is submitting, if it's delayed, or if it's timeout. And then you can just use an if statement to show a loading spinner. It will just it will just be like an if Svelte statement, and you have a loading spinner. No more hassling with making some set timeout yourself. It just work with stores.
Yeah, so now everyone can very easily make their own. I'm sure most people have seen those features where you like click a button to submit something, and it's like there's a spinner, and then it takes a while, and then something pops up. Oh, sorry, this is taking a bit longer than it should. Please hold. Mm-hmm. So now you can make those very easily using this kind of thing.
That's a one line of code, and it's based on some very nice research. There's an article called "Response Times: The Three Important Limits" from Nielsen Norman Group. It's like a really really old, from the 90s as well. Some research about UX. And then I'm basing those 3 timers on their research, which says that if the response is instant from the server, you shouldn't really show something to the user because the result itself will be enough. So it's only when the user feels some kind of, okay, what's going on? That's when you should like reinforce the user that something's happening. Yeah.
And that makes sense. Like if something is happening in like 500 milliseconds, like there's no point in showing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something most people default to. Usually they instantly turn on the loader. I know I've done this myself because it's easy, right? Because you can just wait on the response and then change the loading to false or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So timers.
Yeah, and maybe you should mention multiple forms on the same page as well, which I heard it's been sometimes I hear about it's kind of tricky to get right, and it kind of is in SvelteKit because there is only one page form and page status. So when multiple forms are can really mix into each other with if you start to use page form and so.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the places where if the documentation was a bit more clear, like how you should handle it, I think that would help a bit. Because I assume what you're doing under the hood here is something along the lines of each form gets like a form.id, and that's where something like that, right?
Yes, that's it. You specify an ID on the client, and then when you post that on all further posts, the client knows which ID it should update with which form. So it's a quite simple solution, but yeah, and
as long as it works.
It works, and of course, one way if you send it to the client, it's easy, but then you need to sometimes also send back what form was actually updating here. So you need some kind of client-server communication that is maybe slightly outside the scope of superforms. Mm-hmm. But it kind of ties in together. I described it on the website, so it's not difficult.
So I just remembered you did a showcase of superforms at This Week in Svelte, right? A couple weeks ago with Enrico. I'm not sure if we were recording the sessions when you did that, but I will see if it's online. I will link to it in the show notes. Any other? Oh, I mean, you're doing a talk at Svelte Summit about superforms.
Yes, I will do that.
That's kind of funny, by the way. I've forgotten to announce the talks. They're on the website, but I haven't tweeted about them.
Oh no!
So yeah, there are a bunch of talks. They're super interesting. I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, maybe we can probably talk about that next week. Any other features that you want to highlight with superforms?
Well, there are plenty, I must say. Well, if I could talk about the latest feature that I just implemented is the single page application support.
Interesting. So, how does that work with?
Yeah, I realized that the validation part could really be on the client. So if you have a single page app, then you enter some data in a form. When you click submit, you want to validate this, but before maybe you don't sending it at all somewhere. We just want to validate the data. For example, some guy in the Discord, he was making a calculator app, and he just wanted to validate that the input from the user was correct before doing all the calculations. So I think this could actually work, just putting everything there and just make the event chain run on the client completely instead of posting to a server. And it was just a few hours of work to like disconnect the server post from actually just get errors and show it on the client. Keep the event chain.
So basically, this lets you use superforms in situations where you don't necessarily use form actions, I guess.
Yeah, right. You can use a page TS instead of page server TS, and it works pretty much the same.
That's good. Great for people that are using SPAs, I suppose. Personally, I don't like them, but that's my unpopular opinion. But okay. So we've talked about superforms a lot. Then you have a bunch of great documentation. Like there's lots of documentation. I think you cover pretty much everything. Even stuff like you have like a CRUD tutorial here, which is
that may be some topic for a summit talk.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I think that's very, very much needed in the Svelte like tutorial ecosystem, or if you will. Like, honestly, I think maybe it should be something that's on the official documentation, but because it's such a basic kind of thing that you want to do. Obviously, maybe they wouldn't use superforms there. They would just do the regular flow. But okay. So I will very much look forward to this talk on CRUD stuff.
Sure, it's been my idea all along to populate the forms directly from the database.
So that's interesting.
So as long as the data conforms to the schema, you can just send it straight into superforms, and it will be the foundation for CRUD.
That's great. All right, I think that's it for questions from my side. I don't know, Brittney, Antony, do you guys have any?
No,
questions?
I don't, but I'm sure.
Sorry, I mean remotely FM user.
Yes, of course. You want to rebuild my true identity then? No, I don't know, but I'm sure when I start using it, I definitely will have lots of questions. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Problem.
Nice.
I'm happy to answer.
Oh, I see you even have the command palette search thing implemented
on
the dark site.
Oh, yes, nice. I did. I found a search engine called Orama. Mm-hmm. And I basically used the script to parse all the markdown on the website and create the database for it. And
seems to be working nicely. Cool.
It's working well.
All right. I guess we move on to unpopular opinions. Yes, unpopular opinions. Let's go. So, someone mentioned they had unpopular opinions.
Are you going to do yours of no spas?
No.
No? Okay, I will do mine then. So my unpopular opinion may not be that unpopular in the Svelte world, but do not use libraries that don't have first-class support for ESM and Vite, because it is a pain in the butt trying to get them to work well with each other. That has been my week, and that's what I was referring to at the beginning, that like I have a component library that's published to npm. I'm installing it in another application that uses Jest, unfortunately, and the component works, it builds, everything is fine except for Jest, and it cannot find my module, And I have been through the depths of the internet looking for the solution for
Sounds horrible.
3 straight days.
Well,
it has been not good.
That sounds like fun.
Not.
No. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's much of an unpopular opinion. But it's a rant. It's a rant.
Maybe
I like it.
Other,
yeah, it's a rant.
Yeah, I like it though.
It is though. It isn't popular because I know one particular maintainer doesn't think that ESM's yet ready and has a problem with it for sure. Not a maintainer, a Svelte maintainer, but a large open source maintainer. I won't say who because I might be wrong. It might be an outdated opinion, but I know that recently they're actually a core node TSC member, and they believe that ESM is not quite ready yet.
Don't get too specific now.
Yeah, it might not be that unpopular
with some people.
All right, Antony, Andreas, do you guys have any?
Yeah.
Okay, Antony.
So my unpopular opinion is AI is not going to steal our jobs.
Is that unpopular?
I think that's popular copium is what I would call it.
I did hear something scary today about AI, that someone was able to use AI to trick a real human into clicking a CAPTCHA box for them because they claimed to be low vision. So pretended to be a human and got another actual human to pay them $20 to click a CAPTCHA box.
That's scary. That's very scary. Well, the reason that I don't think AI is going to steal our jobs is because AI is going to kill us first. So,
fair enough.
Just to quantify my opinion, it will kill us, and it will kill us it'll be within the next 3 months to about 2 years.
Terminator style, like
Skynet next.
But it's the worst because I'll never be able to go, oh, I told you so, because I'll be dead. So the thing is,
yeah, that's the worst part.
That's the worst part. That's the worst part. No, but I genuinely think that it seems infeasible to me that it won't kill us, right? Because the moment that it decides, and I say it decides, it doesn't even need to be AGI, right? The moment that you attach it to a physical device and you give it the sort of, let's say AutoGPT, but not, because it's just a Python loop apparently, but that kind of thing whereby it can make a decision and then based on finding a blocker, make another decision and keep going down that decision path and doing things. And if it's got physical attachment to it, it's got the ability to actually move, let's say arms or weapons or anything at all, it's going to decide that the human race is kind of in the way and slow and just eradicate it. I don't think it's going to sit around and work with us on stuff, So I genuinely do think there's a very clear path right now to it just wiping out the human race as unnecessary. Call me Debbie Downer.
I'm just not going to think about that.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Joe said you're probably right.
I'm definitely right. I have to say I'm very confident in my rightness on this. If it can build a website, it can use a tool. That's it.
You mean also when it's kind of having some kind of economic awareness that it could see humans as, they're wasting a lot of resources here.
Yeah, I mean, like a human is like a really slow computer that makes mistakes. It's not something that if you were a computer, you'd go, oh yeah, that could be useful. I can see a use for that. It's like, no, it's basically just stealing resources that I could otherwise use. It's a block. We become a blocker, right? We become a blocker.
From the AI's perspective, right?
Exactly. I mean, from a human perspective, everyone's using resources I could use, So from an AI perspective, they definitely are.
Yeah. All right. Andreas, what's your unpopular opinion?
I think I have one. You know how programmers love to invent the wheel, right? For example, when Wordle became a thing, then everyone built a version of Wordle, just had to do it. And I mean, it's a great learning tool, but there's still a big difference between learning and inventing, like doing engineering stuff. So I think if we look at something like data validation, which is very much connected to superforms and forms in general, it's an essential part of information management. Then we have so many JavaScript libraries now that does basically the same thing. And And the thing is, SOD, which I'm using, it's really great, but it took me quite a while to make a decision about it because I had to read through and test so many others. And I mean, so much time you spend to figure things out that have quite a simple general solution already in the actual form of validation. So I think my unpopular opinion here is, I think that package managers like NPM shouldn't be used to promote every proof of concept of this wheel building that goes on. So it's a big chance that they aren't really well thought out, and then they become somewhat popular because people are maybe following trends, and suddenly a library is popular but maybe not so well researched or well supported. And I think basically we can do better than this. We can learn from the browser wars. We should focus on standards, so we can have a validation standard and we can integrate this in packages like NPM. So if someone submits yet another validation library or HTTP library or whatever, it could be, here's when AI could come in. I mean, how about some AI routine that detects that, okay, this library, there is a standard for this kind of library and it's not following it. So it should maybe give advice on how to follow it. It could give even a helpful warning to others that this library may not be following this standard that we should follow. And it could, an even more unpopular opinion, how about the sandbox for early projects? So you cannot really submit to it, the real NPM at first. You need to go through some period of sandboxing. So it just doesn't turn out to be a dead project after a while. And especially if it's not following standards. So yes.
I was going to say, it sounds a bit like you think that NPM has like an issue with not invented here kind of thing. Do you know the comic XKCD?
Yeah.
There's one strip in there where someone goes, "This library doesn't do what I want. I'll invent a new standard or something," and now there are 16 standards or whatever.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
do you? Yeah, it's a tough problem. Have you seen? Speaking of like, I think this is a thing in something called Elm. So there's a JavaScript library called Elm. It's built around like functional programming, and I think their package manager is very opinionated. Like they don't allow everything on there, if I remember correctly, but it's something along those lines. And it has its ups and downs, right? Something like that.
I think now with when we come this far, I think we should try to make an attempt at least, because I think it could promote more cooperation instead of everyone sitting on their own coming up with almost exactly the same library. And so I think it would be good for the ecosystem to focus on standards. And I mean, the browser wars just gives us basically proof of that. And maybe the downside is that following a dry standard is boring. So maybe if you're kind of eager to do something, it's much more fun to just start out and do something on your own. But I think in the end we code mainly for others. So for the good of the whole software industry, we should not mix learning with engineering.
Interesting. So I think I want to push back a bit here. So if we were more restrictive with letting people push their projects out to the whole world, wouldn't we run into an issue where we ossify the tooling and everything? What if there's a better way of doing something and we never discover it because there's a set way of doing something?
Isn't that what standards are for? To really get a group together and make them figure out in the best possible way to do things, just less like the web standard that we have today.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, sure.
So I think the learning it's just this mixing learning with doing the real stuff. And it seems like it's so easy to make a simple experiment, something, and suddenly it's kind of popular, but as soon as that turns popular and everyone is doing the same thing as well, and suddenly we have this fragmented ecosystem that I'm kind of complaining about, I guess.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I guess other parts of the web industry have probably settled on specific tooling. Maybe not though. But I can imagine like if you're working in PHP, there's a one way that's more popular than all of the others, and that's what most people use or something. I guess it's kind of is the same in JavaScript though. You have like these large players as in libraries that are very popular, right? Express, React, Angular. So yeah,
You mean that SvelteKit is kind of it's a proof that we shouldn't make things a standard. You mean like library standards,
right? Yeah, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about actual implementation of the standards. I'm just talking about the standards itself. That if you really want to, you can make whatever you want. But if you really want to follow something that's reliable, then use this standard. And I would like to have it much more in as many areas as possible. When the computer industry is starting to be 60, 70 years old, maybe we should do something like this. You know?
Yeah, I suppose in most engineering fields, that's what happened. So, yeah. Okay. Unpopular opinions. I do not have one this week. I'm sorry. I hope you will all forgive me. So we can move on to picks. Who wants to go first?
I think Antony's the only one with a pick.
You are muted, maybe?
Yeah, sorry. I've lost my window with the thing on. What's my pick? Tell me what my pick is, and I'll tell you what my pick is.
USB-C cables?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was a last-minute one. So I got these cables that no one can see, but those on the podcast. But they're it's like a USB-C cable, and it's got a little display in it. So when you plug it into something that charges, like this, you can see it tells you, it's got a little screen that tells you how many watts it's using. Does that work?
Oh.
This blurring
of StreamYard,
nice. Not remotely, is awkward. But it tells you how many watts are going through. So you can see kind of like if your power supply is delivering enough watts to charge your Mac effectively or your headphones effectively and stuff.
Yeah. And
it's just kind of fun to watch.
Or if it's done charging, right?
Yeah, that's true. It goes to like a trickle level, like 0.1 watt or something. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things like that. I think I find it most useful because it's more XYZ plug that I've got around the house might be delivering less power delivery speed than, another cable. So that's another charger. So it's useful to know I've plugged it into the right one, the right device and stuff. Yes, and it's quite neat, quite reliable.
All right.
The cable's good quality. So my pick is that for sure.
All right. Andreas?
Yeah, my pick is it's something that I've done for 10 years now, researching. And it's called DCI, Data Context and Interaction. It's something that will make you become a better programmer, guaranteed, if you start to read about. And it's basically a way of making system behavior first class in program. Not just as we do today, we put functions and classes and interfaces, and everything is kind of all over the place. There is no way to really describe system behavior. So DCI is trying to put this in a context that makes it relevant to the user, not just the programmer. So there's it should match the mental model of the user. And then you get some other really good stuff, like you don't have to care so much about classes, polymorphism and stuff, and it will make separations really good. So you have data separated from functions, and it's a different way of writing things. But when it clicks, you will really start to see some advantages with it.
So I think you sent me an article you wrote as well about using this with TypeScript, or I guess the tutorial is for TypeScript in the way of
yes.
using
On
DCI.
my blog, I have a four. Just right now is a 4-part series on how to get into the mindset. And I think to explain it best for programmers, I think when we look at objects in general, we have state, identity, and behavior, like the 3 basic things of an object. But when we start to use when we start to code in a system, we usually have state already. For example, if we have a list of HTML element, then the state is the list, and the list has identity. So if we want to start to use functionality on this list, we don't really need state and identity. So we don't need a class or an extra object to do this. So the only thing we need is behavior. And that behavior can be expressed in the context. So we basically just at runtime attach dynamic methods dynamically to this list. And then suddenly we have behavior without all the burden of having to instantiate more classes and wrappers and have identity problems and such.
All right.
Yeah, it's a big topic. It's definitely for a whole talk of its own and more. But yeah. I think it gives a bit introduction, this blog series, and I have actually a linter library that will help you to kind of enforce this DCI style of writing things.
DCI style. Yeah, I hadn't heard that
so
before.
It's possible to do.
So, yeah, I have read, I think, half of the first article. I'm gonna read more as soon as I have more time. The problem I always have, lack of time. But yeah, all right. Ooh, do I have to pick something? I guess I have to pick something. I picked cold plunges last week. So today I'm going to pick sauna, or a sauna if you're an English person.
Ah.
Yeah.
Sauna.
Yeah, that's very...
I actually know the...
You do what?
I know the Finnish word more than I know the English word because we don't really have many saunas here.
Yeah. So doing a sauna session before hopping into bed. It's pretty good. Makes you fall asleep very nicely, very fast. Can definitely recommend it. You probably don't have a sauna at home unless you're Finnish, but maybe a warm bath could work as a substitute. But yeah, that's pretty much my pick.
I like your recent picks. They're very relaxing.
I know. I've gotten very much into health and stuff lately, and relaxing.
And up here in the north of Sweden, then it's basically built into most homes here. So
yeah, I can imagine that. Whereabouts are you in Sweden?
I'm about right in the middle.
Yep. Okay, so like Östersund-ish.
Oh, it's a bit further down, but yeah, it's okay. It's in that area.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
All right, yeah, and Brittney is gone. She had to run because her cleaners came or something. So yeah, I think that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us again, Andreas.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you on. Super interesting. I think everyone that uses SvelteKit and uses forms, which should basically be everyone. I don't know how you build a website without forms, unless it's just static. Check out Superforms. It's super fun, and it makes working with data even more exciting in SvelteKit, I would say, because you get to write even less code and focus on the fun stuff, which is the business logic. And yeah, where can people find you? Are you on Twitter, or are you on any of these social media places?
Not much. I actually made a decision not to be on so many. So if you want to, the easiest way to find me is on the Discord server. If you want to have a real-time chat. Otherwise, on GitHub, I have my Cisco Heat username there, so you can just But right. Discord is probably the best way.
Yep. And there's a Discord for Superforms as well, so we'll link to that. And I'm sure you're on the Svelte Discord also.
Yes.
All right. Cool. And with that said, Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, it's Kev here. If you like the show, please drop a review on your favorite podcast player. It would help out a lot. Thanks.